All right. Well, thanks for tuning into another episode of the Why Influence podcast. Today, we're using a new software. We're sort of experimenting with it called Riverside. So I appreciate your patience with us today. But I just want to welcome Jim Fuhs to our show today. He is a live streamer. He's been live streaming for several years now. He hosts multiple shows. He has a podcast that talks about live streaming. He also does marketing. He's got a marketing business. He's run a couple summits now. So just immersed in the marketing world, and just really honored to have you as a guest today. So thanks for coming on, Jim.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, because when I think of your podcast, Why Influence, you definitely bring on some big names. So I'm humbled and honored that you would have me join you today. So great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I don't know if I can give you explain all the things that you have going on because there's so much. But can you give maybe like an elevator pitch of what your brand is about and what it is that you do?
Yeah. So as I like to say, I do marketing the Marine Corps way. Taking my 20 plus years of leadership as a Marine officer, and I brought it over into the marketing world, and really focusing on live streaming, remote live stream production, digital marketing consulting, and even more recently, helping people with virtual and hybrid events. And you know, where the Marine Corps piece comes in is I really help people adapt and overcome, which is a lot of what we've had to do over these last few months.
Awesome. I see Nate just tuned in. Can't pull it in because we're not using StreamYard here, but thanks for tuning in, Nate. Okay, so let's start off with some advice. You've got a podcast, you got a live stream show you've been doing for a couple of years. You're active on other social medias, on Twitter, Instagram, very active on LinkedIn. You're doing a lot of stuff, and then you're also doing consulting for other businesses. You're running summits. So if someone wanted to start live streaming today, like someone who's never live streamed before, like what's some of your biggest advice that you would give to this person?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to fail. You need to start. But the other big piece of advice I would say is make sure, and we're talking about live streaming, but I would say make sure you have good audio. People will forgive a bad picture, but if your audio is bad, they're not going to come back. So, make that investment, even if it's a lapel mic, if you're using your phone, but get that good audio. And if you're not sure, practice, plug that microphone in, hit record, see how it sounds. If you don't like it, because that really to me is probably one of the most critical factors starting out, more important than, do I need a real camera that I'm going to live stream from, and all these other, really a lot of this stuff is just like gadgets in a sense. And I know you've seen a lot of that, Jeremy, as well. So really keep it simple, audio first, and then you can start working on all the other stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely hear that a lot. Even with people that create video content, they'll say you could have, junky video quality to starting out as long as you get good audio. It's definitely more important for having that audio first than to have the video first. And I think that applies to multiple platforms, including live streaming. All right, and so what do you suggest in that regard then, since we're on that topic? So like I use the ATR 2100, which at the time was around $60. Now with COVID, it's gone up a little bit, and they've also released a newer version of it. But it should be under $100 for something like I'm using. But what is it that you see other people use, or what do you use for yourself?
Yeah, that actually, the one you're talking about is a great microphone. I'm using the Samson Q2U. I wish I had known about it sooner. And the reason I like it, one, it's got kind of same thing, price point $60, $70. It's both a USB and an XLR microphone. So when you start to upgrade maybe your audio interfaces, this is a microphone that can grow along with you. But then I've also heard people say that what it comes down to is some microphones, your voice might sound better than on others. So maybe you can go to like a place like Guitar Center, somewhere like that, and try out the mic to see how you sound. But the nice thing, really a USB mic is probably what most people are going to start out with, because it'll plug right into their computer, or I guess maybe with if especially with Mac products, they might need a USB-C interface, but you can definitely find those. But I think the mic you said is good. You know, I will say not to no not to trash Blue Yeti, but I started out with a Blue Yeti, and one of the things that I did learn over time is that it is a good microphone, but it picks up everything. And so your microphone, the microphone I'm using, stays focused on my voice. And so it kind of can give me that forgiveness if there's background noise going on. And
Right.
really the same with the lapel mic. If you're going to be, maybe mobile and don't want to be carrying around a big microphone, lapel mic can do a great job of, keeping that audio good, even in a phone, and you got people all around you. So those are probably the ones I would recommend.
Great. Yeah, I agree that having the USB, option is very useful. And we got a comment from Chris Stone saying the audio here sounds great for what it's worth. So, we're having a great conversation here with great audio, and we both spent less than $100 on our equipment that we're using. So don't overthink it and just get some basic equipment to get you started. All right. So let's say you meet someone who is already live streaming. Maybe they've been doing it for 6 months, a year, even 2 years. They're more established in the industry. What would be some of your biggest advice for them to maybe think about or do? Like what's something that you're doing differently that you feel like maybe someone else is not necessarily doing, like some of your secret sauce, maybe?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the repurposing. I think that's where a lot of live streamers, and I'd even say podcasters, fall short is you've created this great content and it's kind of like you're putting it on the library shelf and you're off to read the next book or create the next book. But there's a lot of good nuggets that you're not sharing to bring people back. Goes back to, as an example, we interviewed Bob Berg, last year. At some point, I want to bring out some of those nuggets from Bob Berg, who's a, world famous author, and get people to go back and watch that video because they may not realize that, oh, you interviewed this guy. So I think the repurposing piece and even the fact that sometimes, because in a sense we all start our shows the same way with kind of the who you are, who's there, what you're talking about. So you need to get those pieces that are later on. Or what I like about what YouTube has done is allowing you to kind of have these chapter markers. So now people can say, hey, at minute 5 or chapter 1, this is where we talked about this or that. So I think that's a big piece of, and this is really stuff that's evolved. I don't even know that this was all necessarily available a couple of years ago, but learning from experience, I think the repurposing is definitely something you want to do with your episodes after you've finished with them, before you forget, or if you need to, get a VA or outsource getting that stuff repurposed. But I think that's really going to help drive more listeners and viewers to your show.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. I know that's something I've been experimenting with is repurposing because, I had a period of time where I was doing 2 episodes a week for a couple months, and I didn't really see much growth from it. And I felt like I could do better by doing 1 episode a week, but then doing a better job repurposing that content to drive more traffic to those episodes than if I were to do 2 per week. And I think that's true.
Yeah, and even like, Christian and I were actually releasing 2 podcast episodes a week, and after talking with Chris Stone, even we are like, we've gone to 1 a week, because what happens is you start putting out so much content that your audience doesn't always keep up with you, and even in a sense, it takes a little bit of pressure off of you of like, oh, I got to get all this stuff out, and you haven't even really taken advantage of what you've already done.
Right. Yeah, good points. All right. Something I wanted to ask before we jump into your story is, you've been sharing for a while now. You've got a lot of interviews behind your belt. You've been sharing. Like, does a story come to mind for someone that you've impacted as a result of sharing? Like, has somebody ever reached out to you to say, "Hey, this really made an impact on me," from anything that you put out there, like whether it's a podcast episode or something you posted online?
That's a good question. I think if anything, it's giving people, the folks that maybe have come on our show have gotten the confidence. I mean, as an example, I interviewed this guy, and he's now doing all these podcasts, and I blanking on his name at the moment, but that was like he was afraid to do this stuff, and it's like getting him over that hump. Um, it was Jerry from Standard Insights. We did an interview, and now he's like a madman. He's out there talking about their products left and right. So that's one that really made me feel good because he was like, "Well, I really don't know." So I think, and even earlier when we were talking with everyone, I was not confident on camera, before I started this. This is something that I had to develop, and I even think the whole psychology of confidence on camera is fascinating because a lot of us, of course, I know we have some introverts out there, very comfortable talking in front of a group of people. So you're not talking in front of a group of people, you're just talking at a camera. So it's always seems contradictory. Like you would think it would be the other way around. Like, well, there's nobody here and I can
Right.
always, delete it. But it's fascinating how we don't want to talk on camera, but we'll talk in person.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for sharing that. So, let's talk a little bit about your journey now. So you've several years into this, but did you start sharing with live streaming? Was that the beginning of it? Like, when did you start intentionally sharing on a bigger level? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so the first couple of years, I was a social media manager helping other businesses with their social, and I started to see like oh we could do Facebook Live, but what I was tending to do was like I was basically putting their lives onto their pages, and I was like the man behind the camera in a sense. And so, but I knew it's like, this is something I really need to start doing myself. And so, really, like I said, it was after Social Media Marketing World in 2018 that I finally got that confidence to start doing the live video because, it kind of goes like, you don't like the way you look, you don't like the way you sound. And I had been doing in-person workshops for, at least a year or two before that. So it's not like I'm afraid to talk. And, obviously, even being in the Marines, I had to talk in front of large groups of people all the time. But yeah, but once I saw how the interaction, and even like with what we're doing now, I personally like being on a show where there's a conversation going on, at least between like the two of us, as opposed to if you want to call it this solo show where you're just talking. Because I don't know, is this something weird about like,
Yeah.
you're like you're thinking that there's millions of people out there, but the reality is there could be no one. And if it's a live stream, you're hoping there's someone out there so you can interact with them. So I like the at a minimum, like in this case, right? You're interviewing me and we're having a conversation, or like Tim and I co-hosting a show, or even like what Chris and I do, where sometimes we're interviewing, other times it's just the two of us geeking out about tech gear on Amazon. But I think I enjoy having the conversation, and I think that a little bit of just my personality is I'm a
Yeah.
people person.
Yeah, and it's definitely different styles of sharing because I know actually you were the ones that sort of challenged me to do I think my first solo YouTube video, which now has I think over 5,000 views on it, but is talking about StreamYard versus Zoom because you were talking about how you felt like I had some knowledge that not everybody else had about StreamYard, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll share it. So it's definitely, that was uncomfortable for me because that's, I've been doing these podcast interviews and it's much easier to just be the person asking questions or answering questions than it is to just talk to a camera. So it's different styles of sharing. So it sounded like when you started your live streaming, you had to give yourself permission, or there's something there where you were like helping companies with live streaming. You sort of felt like you had to do it yourself, but it wasn't until you went to social media world that you got that oomph and that push over. So, what did that look like? Like, how did you give yourself permission there to do that?
Well, part of it was like getting in you could call it, well, it was a Facebook group. So in a sense, it was like a support group. And we were basically, it was a challenge, right? We're going to go live every day. So you're like given homework, like, okay, you got to go and do a Facebook Live on your personal page and just say, like, hey, I'm Jim Fuhs and I'm with Fusion Marketing and This is what I do for people. Have a great day." Really it started out that simple, but it's like, oh, the internet didn't blow up and nobody was knocking at my door saying, "Hey, get off of that internet stuff." So it's like, it's not that bad. I just gotta practice and get comfortable. And the other thing you start to realize with live streaming is that you know, first of all, people are gonna forgive you for making mistakes. It is live after all. In fact, I sometimes equate it to like a lot of these reality TV shows, right? Some of it is people are watching because 'cause they're looking for the train wreck, right? They're not and so that's where, uh, kind of the difference between the recorded, polished video versus this live stuff, you can't always take it back, and that's okay, you know, I think for the most part, especially with a lot of these live streams, unless you're just in a really controversial area, usually you're not gonna have anything that you can't recover from. So I
Yeah.
think with Tim inviting me, I had no idea it was gonna turn into a show because at first, like, "Oh, yeah, it would be great to be on other people's shows," but you're kinda like, "Well, what do I have to offer?" I think some of it even and, we talk about it in Toastmasters, it's this whole imposter syndrome where we don't feel like we're good enough, but, I mean, even Jeremy, getting to know you and, at NSA and some of these other places, I mean, you've done a lot of amazing things, but you're such a humble, kind of low key guy, you're like, oh my gosh, this is guys, developed, literally, I think what hundreds of thousands of followers on other platforms for other businesses. And, but when you're just the guy walking down
Thanks.
the street, nobody knows.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So starting is obviously the hardest part. A lot of people, the hardest thing is to start, then the hardest thing is to keep going, and then you can tweak after that. So you found this Facebook support group, and you had this challenge to do these live streams. But even before that, you had to have those reasons. So do you mind going into like when you were helping those companies and helping them do their live streams, like why were you like, hey, I've got to start doing this? Like what was
Well,
your
part of it is as I'm a big believer, especially as a digital marketer, that you kind of got to practice what you preach. I mean, you can't be on, someone that's a LinkedIn or Twitter, professional and not know how to use the platform. You've got to understand why things work or don't work, especially as an instructor. That when I do these classes for these small business centers, these people are looking to me to tell them how to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to be very effective as an instructor and I'm not going to get asked to come back. So it is continuous learning. And then when you start to see, and that was part of it too, is Facebook, YouTube, all these channels, and it's always kind of funny to me. They tell you this is what we are going to start doing, and this is what you need to do if you want to get more reach. But people try to fight it. So Facebook, and this was probably about the 2018 time or so, Facebook Live is going to be the next big thing. If you're live, you're going to see reach more people and it's going to be organic. So it's like, well, you can keep trying to just do post and hope that people see it, or you can spend a bunch of money on ads, or you can go live and see the engagement on your page go up. And that's exactly what I started to see with a couple of my clients. One was this brewery. I mean, we did a 10-minute video where I basically was interviewing the owner. First time he'd ever been on Facebook, let alone Facebook Live. And we literally had, you know, thousands of viewers off of this short 10-minute video in a very short period of time. And so it's like, wow, this stuff really works. I need to be doing this for my business. But then it was kind of like, well, what do I talk about? So what ended up working out well though is by, however, God works in mysterious ways. Tim, liking what I was talking about with Instagram TV, invites me onto his show. He had his own show at the time, and he's like, "Hey, you wanna do a show with me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I think actually where that helped both of us, and, you kinda talked about it, before, how it can be a real challenge to keep going, well, we hold each other accountable, right? It's that hidden of like, well, I can't say I'm not gonna do it because then he's gonna have to do it by himself or vice versa.
right?
So I think that partnership actually drives you to be even better. And I know you've got an amazing wife that helps drive you and vice versa. And so I think that helps in your case. And I'm blessed as well. My wife is so supportive of what I do, but you got to have someone than yourself sometimes to hold you accountable to keep going, because it is definitely not an overnight success,
Right.
type of scenario. Maybe some people get it, but I don't know that I've personally met those people yet, and I don't know if you have yet either.
Yeah, no, it doesn't usually work out that way. Uh, well, that's great. So you had the Facebook group to help you with the supporting. You had the accountability of having your partner, co-host, and then you had the reasons to get you started. I think that is the perfect formula to get you going, to get you started. And then it sounded like it's something that keeps you going. So is that still true today? Like your reasons for starting was to be like, hey, like I'm a proof of concept. Like I know what I'm talking about, and you can sort of go to clients and be like, look, this is what you need to do, and I've done it for myself. Is that still sort of what's driving you forward, or has it changed at all?
It definitely still does. I mean, I think, what's been interesting is, and even today is an example of that, you know, it used to be where I was always the person asking the questions. Well, now it's taken a couple years, but now I'm being asked to be interviewed by others. So that's really been, gratifying and humbling, but it also means that, people are starting to your message is starting to get out there. Even like you talk about, like every once in a while, I'll do short videos by myself, and even that is weird, and that's why they're probably usually short. Like, hey, here's something new that's happening in social media, things you want to think about. I've did a video showing like you're talking about with Zoom, like how to use Zoom for Toastmasters and get yourself in a position where your people can see your hand gestures and everything else, and that got a lot of views. And it's like, that's one thing I think I need to do more of, from the perspective of making myself stand out for just my business. But I also think that by showing people that, I know what I'm doing, and like you said, have that proof. It's like if somebody's like, well, I'm looking for someone to help me with live video. It's like, well, it's like I've got this, in a sense, just like you do, I've got this portfolio. Like, well, look, here's over 100 videos of a show I co-hosted. Here's another 50 or so I've done with someone else. Here's so I understand the technology. I can even now show these are videos that I produced for other people. Uh, and so I think really that's where the shift for me has been. If it you know, as Tim has been joking lately, his new saying, now more than ever, for me, it is about live streaming and remote production, as opposed to, you know, back in the old days, it was more about like, oh, well, let me help you post your social media. I still do that, but this is something I think I've become much more passionate about, because I think what live video helps us do is it helps us help others tell their story, get their message out. And, as we also sometimes say, where video, in my opinion, can be stronger than, say, the written word, is we're able to put all the senses out on this except for, touch, taste, and smell at the moment. But who knows? Virtual reality may change that.
Yeah, those are great points. Yeah, that's amazing. And it sounds like your why has been relatively the same, but it's become significantly more powerful because now, after doing this for a while, you have this passion around the subject matter, and you're seeing the results that it's giving for other people, and you're able to make a positive impact in people's lives, and then that trickles down to their network. So I think that it's pretty amazing. I hear all the time where you know someone can be creating a ton of content and still be fumbling around, not knowing what they're doing, and then at some point they figure it out. I know that Mr. Beast just had a something where he shared about that. He had a couple thousand videos with like barely any views, and then something happened, and now he's got millions of subscribers on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I think it is. It's a constant learning process. I mean, even like I shared earlier today, we just started. Right? Sounds funny. We just started a Tim and Jim Show Facebook page. Uh, we probably in the back of our mind know we should have done that a long time ago, but it's like, you know what? We've been doing this for 2 years. It's let's take it another step further, right? Let's really build, in a sense, it's a personal brand of Tim and I, but people know us, right? They think of, "Oh, yeah, Tim and Jim," and it's gratifying and humbling to get the feedback from people too sometimes of, "Oh, you guys are such a great team," and, because I'm sure there's some days where I feel like, "Oh my gosh," but we're able to keep that energy going at the showtime, and I think we make our guests feel very comfortable, and they're able to share their story, and really that's what for us the show is all about is we wanted to bring on people that could share their expertise in different area of marketing and small business and even stuff dealing with a mindset that a marketer or entrepreneur would want to make not only make them better but it makes us better because we're getting to share in that message. Um, and I think eventually you start to think of these things, so even like you know Diana Gladney being on our show a couple weeks ago, an amazing YouTuber, and like, wow, yeah, I never had really thought about the fact that by multi-streaming, even though in the sense in the dashboard I can see everyone's comments, the YouTubers aren't seeing what the Facebookers are seeing or what the people on Periscope are seeing. And so you have to start to think at some point like, well, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like in building community, ultimately, where do you want that community to be? Because not everybody wants to be on Facebook. So you say, well, I'll create a Facebook group, but the folks on YouTube may not do that. And now even YouTube, as you get more subscribers, you can have a community as well. So I think that's what live streaming and even podcasting give you that ability to do. Pat Flynn, we talked about that earlier today as well. He has an amazing community, and it all started with him sharing to help others. And I think that's how I look at it. I'm at a point in my life too where I've been in a couple of networking events where people are like, "Oh, well, why are you in business?" And you're like, "Well, I want to make money," and I'm like, "I want, I want to help people." I wanna help people succeed. I mean, even as a Marine leader, my goal in life was to make those Marines under me better people, better leaders, because eventually they're gonna
Right.
go back to society, and we wanna, return them better than they came. And so I think it's the same with me when I work with other businesses. I wanna see them succeed, and it's kinda to me, it's like a karma thing. If you do help others, it comes back full circle, and you're gonna have a better life as well. So it's not, you know, sure, don't get me wrong, we all wanna make, have financial success, uh, but it's not like the end all and be all. And so I think sometimes, like, when you hear people like, "Oh, you gotta hustle and do this and do that," it's like, okay, that works for some people, but I also wanna enjoy my life on the journey."
Yeah, for sure. And nowadays you can really make money doing most anything. So why not, start a platform early, and then over time that could be something that could, drive you an income that you could live on doing something you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So let's think a little bit about who you were before starting your live stream show. So like you were helping other companies do with their marketing, like who you were at that point. I believe you were probably going to Toastmasters back then, maybe.
No, I wasn't yet, believe it or not, and
Okay.
that's probably something that helped me a lot. Yeah, I had actually been running a government contract consulting business before I switched full time into social media, and it just, it goes back to it wasn't something that I was enjoying, but I've always been, somewhat of a geek at heart. I joke that like when I was a young captain in the Marines, I was the guy in the housing, the government housing area in Japan. Like when the 28.8 modem would come out, everyone's like, "Hey Jim, can you replace the modem card in my computer?" So I was that guy.
Yeah.
Kind of always been into tech, and then you know life happens, kids happen, and so I wasn't as focused on that. So it's kind of like, hindsight being 2020. I wish I had paid a little bit more attention to this sooner. I'd be further ahead. But I will say too that that's the other encouraging thing when you start to meet these other folks in the industry, whether it be podcasting, live streaming, we all had to start, right? It's like you didn't get to where you are overnight, right? And so it's the same thing with live streaming. I mean, we had to start with episode 1. Like I said, if you want to go see it, it's on the Tim and Jim show page right now. You can see what we looked like 2 years ago. And so so yeah, so going back, it was like I was helping people coming up with their strategy for their social media, but I was also having to teach myself. It's like there is no, like, in my opinion, there's no true school of social media. And or even if someone like, well, I got a degree in social media marketing. Well, what did you just take that class about LinkedIn stories? Well, no, well, exactly. It's changes so much that
Right.
I think the foundation and the principles can be taught in school, but I also think that some of it is common sense. I mean, I think there's other ways to learn. The world of education is changing so much before our eyes. So a lot of it was just like starting with Facebook, learning the ins and outs by, in a sense, having the trust of these business owners, like, yeah, can you run my page for me? They don't have time for it. So learning what works, what doesn't work, learning how to run ads. And then it's like, okay, now let's learn about Instagram. Now let's learn about Twitter. So that's really was the progression. And so by the time I got to live streaming, I was already, established on most of these platforms. But what's funny is I would say uh, LinkedIn really became more of even more focused once I got LinkedIn Live, because it's like, okay, if I've got this ability to go live on LinkedIn, I need to start spending more time. And I think in looking at the platforms, it's kind of like, and I learned this from Andrew and Pete in a group that I'm in with them. It's like, it's the 90-10 rule, right? Focus your time on that platform that makes the most sense for you. So, when I teach these, or even these business owners, right? When you do an analysis, it's like, okay, what kind of business do you have? Okay, if it's a very visual business, probably need to have you on Instagram. You might still have them on Facebook, or, oh, well, I do B2B. Well, then you need to be on LinkedIn. It doesn't really, other than like Facebook being your yellow pages, uh, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a B2B business to spend a lot of time and energy on Facebook. So I think those are the things that have learned as I've gone along as a
Yeah.
consultant in the marketing field, that there is no one size. So many people want that one size fits all, and I just don't think it works that way. I think everyone has a custom need.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So speaking on that, like, you've been putting all this effort into essentially building community around these platforms, around these live streams and podcasts. So do you mind just explaining like what your community is like? Like, what does your community look like? Like, what's it feel like? What's the vibe? Like, is it your community? Are you part of a lot of other communities? Like, can you describe just the community that you deal with?
Yeah, I would definitely say I would say, like, the community that is building with Tim and I. We have a lot of these, like, repeat viewers and the people that are subscribing, and so they'll show up, they'll, share our stuff, they'll give us shout outs, and we do the same for them. But then we're also parts of different communities. I'm a part of Winnie's son has a little Twitter community that we're all like in a like a group DM where we all communicate with each other. I'm in several social media, now podcasting groups as well. I mean, you know, I'm in the Podfest group, the Atlanta podcast meetup, and even we've got a group here locally now too, with it's called the Pace Setters that Chris invited me to. It's kind of a closed group, and then even NSA Georgia. I think that's another community that I'm becoming a more formal part of, because it's kind of like we want to hang out with those people that are like-minded. I would say, like, in the case of, Tim is a great guy. We're both very positive people, and so those are kind of the people that we're attracting. So I think actually our next step is we're going to create a private group for our, our fans, so to speak, or our community. I don't even know if I like to use the term fans. I feel like we're all just a community is supporting each other. I'm in Rob's uh, content creator community as well. So
Oh,
everyone's
cool.
very supportive of each other, and I think those are what I tend to be in. And of course, then you get into your. It's I don't know if you're a member of any of these, but it's also interesting, like, if you get into like the the Cobb County groups and things like that, those tend to be more just like places where people complain. So I'm trying to stay away from a lot of that stuff, and make it more focused on what I'm interested in, as opposed to what's the latest gossip.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that and the details on specifically what communities you're involved with. It's interesting to hear because everybody's involved with different communities, and it just helps you get your message out there, or surrounds yourself by people who can support you.
Yeah, and I will say this, I have been, extremely, and I don't wanna say surprised is the right word, but I've been found that the podcast community is a very supportive, tight, close-knit group, and I really have enjoyed, now that I'm
I
officially a
agree.
podcaster, being a part of that, and it was very, very heartening to become a part of that. Because sometimes I will say that sometimes in maybe some of these social media groups, and, obviously not gonna say any specifically, that there tends to sometimes be more of almost like a, sniping or how can I get, business from people, so a little
Yeah,
bit more
I
of a
get that
government.
too because I've been to TwitchCon, VidCon, cons for different kind of platforms, and nothing really compares to like how humble everyone is at a podcast conference and how willing they are to help you out.
Right, absolutely.
Great. So then, you know, you've been sharing, through your live streaming to help you with your social media business. So, you know, from a very high level, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, do you mind telling us a little bit about your income sources? Because a lot of people out there like, that are creating audiences or influencing for different reasons,
Right.
have to find different ways to make income. Just curious from a high level, like maybe some of your sources that might help other people out.
Yeah, well, one of my, sources, that I've had for a while now is, I am basically, I have, 2 colleges in North Carolina, sometimes 3, that, bring me in as a trainer for their small business center. So I do, monthly, if not more frequently, online courses. They pay me for that. That sometimes leads to the students coming to me wanting to work one-on-one. I actually have been hired by them during the pandemic. They got a special pot of money where they're actually paying me to do one-on-one time as a consultant to individual businesses. We do a Zoom meeting. I kind of go through their stuff. Um, the one that's becoming really bigger is the hybrid and virtual event meetings. Chris Stone and I are working together. We just did a virtual summit for the Jamaican Chamber of Commerce of Atlanta. It's called the Pow Her Virtual Women's Summit. They had over 200 people attend. We ran the whole thing from behind the scenes using a platform called Hopin. We're getting ready to probably do another event for another group in November. It's called a USA Biz Party, and it's going to be another event, and we're going to actually get to speak as well. So we're going to have to kind of balance that out. And then, I've got a couple other organizations that are interested in us doing events for them. So that's where the money's really, starting to become a nice thing as well. And then even doing remote production, I've been able to establish a rate and do some remote production for some organizations where they want to be live like we are on video, but they don't want to have to worry about the tech and everything else. So that's really where I'm seeing the growth, and everything has definitely been on a nice positive slope upward. Things kind of went down a little bit when we all first, were kind of like, okay, what's going on? Is this going to be a couple of weeks? And then once it's like, hey, I'm perfectly comfortable, just like I'm sure you are, sitting in my house. I've got, fiber internet, and I can just keep moving forward. And then of course having the time to do the podcast. Really the idea behind the podcast with Launch Your Live is not only to help people start and get better at live video, but also to say, hey, you can hire us to consult you to help train you to become a better live streamer or start live streaming. So that's kind of another, you know, if you want to call it pivot. And then of course, and then the other starting upstream, if you want to call it, has been really becoming an Amazon influencer with Amazon Live. And because basically if people buy products through watching the show, we get a very small commission. Doesn't charge you any more on your Amazon product, but that's been fascinating because it's like really understanding the dynamics of selling through video because because sometimes I think we feel funny and we really Chris and I do is we really do make it educational. We had Jennifer Watson on from the Weather Channel talking about like things you want to do to weather the storm, and everyone's like, oh, here's a flashlight you might want to buy, or here's a thing you can track the weather with, and but
That's
it
cool.
was fun. It wasn't just like, oh, let's just keep talking about items for sale. We actually make it into a conversation because I think and that's the other thing, right? You start to study, it goes back to, right? Study successful people if you want to get better. Doesn't mean you have to copy them, but it does make you think about, or you see something that you think is bad, and you're like, okay, this is how I could do this better. So I think it's learn. My biggest thing is I mean, I'm in my mid 50s and I have a lot of my peers like they won't touch technology. It's like, but this is the future. So you can either embrace it or you're going to get left behind. And so I think, you know, I think I can't remember who said it, but it's kind of like if you once you stop learning, you start dying. And so I think it's so important that we keep learning, educating ourselves, educating others. Because I mean, the world in the last few months has changed, and it's kind of one of those. It's not going to change back. It's and I don't necessarily like the term the new normal, but we always have change anyway. I just think certain change has accelerated. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
the virtual, whether it's virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, I think that's going to become like the norm. I think that and not even necessarily, let's say, as an example, vaccine comes out in 6 months from now, companies are going to say, well, you know what, we don't need to have everybody work out of this building. They prove they can be responsible working from home. Now we don't have all this overhead cost, so now they can increase the bottom line, and traffic maybe isn't as bad, and so everybody in a sense can win in the big picture. So I think now you have to look at it from our perspective, like, okay, so now what can I do to help these businesses succeed? Because there's they're so busy doing their day to day, they don't realize all the changes that are happening, even with platforms. And so, you know, I mean, I have people even now. I mean, Instagram TV has been out since 2018. I'll go into class and say, "Who's heard of Instagram TV?" And they'll be like, "What? Never heard of it." And so I'm sure LinkedIn Stories is going to be the same way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for sharing that much detail into what's going on because you've got a lot of moving pieces, ranging, I'm sure, from small projects to very large projects, and it's exciting to see that you've got that much movement, and then also to see the potential that you have moving forward because there's going to be nothing but more and more summits. So the fact that you get more summits behind your belt, there's going to be more people wanting to learn live streaming. So the fact that you now have this potential funnel to bring people in to help want you as a potential coach or to learn from you. So
Right.
those are great strategies to
Thanks.
create.
Well, and it's really it is. It's a lot of fun because even as an example, like where maybe before I would have tried to do some of this stuff myself. It's so like now, Chris has his own company. We've partnered together. We've got Tim. I've worked with Tim on one of his events. He may work with us on, because you start to realize, and that would be like maybe another thing I would share with people is don't try to do this all yourself, right? You got to learn to trust people. Now, it doesn't mean that you got to get employees, but even having a, as we like to call it, 1099 relationship, like I'm going to outsource this to you or this person or that person, everybody wins because otherwise, if you try to do it all yourself, you'll drive yourself crazy. So, I couldn't do some of this stuff if it wasn't for building these relationships, and some of them have been built through things like your Zoom meeting and getting to meet folks, and even getting to meet folks that can end up turning into great guests or they want you to be a guest. I think is another thing that I've really enjoyed about, as an example, your weekly creators meetups as well, because and kudos to you, Jeremy, for taking that. initiative to do that because there's so many people that are still like, well, what do we do? How are we going to meet? Or we can't do anything till everybody can meet in person. I think we've accomplished a lot with just being in a virtual world.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So, going off that, I guess, and I appreciate the comment about my meetup. Um, like, what are you looking forward to? Like, what's your future look like? Or, are you living in the current and just going with the flow, or do you have plans and visions? Like, what are you hoping to be like as things move forward?
Yeah, I think the future vision is to get some organizations and companies that consistently want to work with me and my team of folks like Chris to do bigger events that higher revenue not only for us but for them. Uh, Getting to understand these technologies. I mean, I will tell you part of our goal in working with Amazon too is as it would be great to start to have some of these companies like whether it's Samson Tech or the company that you're talking about with your like, hey, we'd like you to demonstrate our products on your Amazon show and start to get some of those that swag, so to speak, that from
Right.
these folks. That's definitely a goal as well. And I think even with the social media piece, I think looking at more, and I've got a couple people I'm working with now to, in a sense, still do it like I'm kind of the face of things, but they're going to do the day to day work. So I think it becomes a win win. I can still generate revenue off of that because I don't think that I can ever like just say, oh well, I'm not going to learn what all these things do because I think that's part of what helps me, be able to do what I do is understanding not only the technology but also how these platforms work. And so you know my wife and I joke, probably keep working as long as I can because I enjoy it, right? It doesn't feel like a job. If
That's
we hit
great.
some of our goals, I would say my longer term goal would be to we're going to build our a new house on the same lot that we're on, but it'll have an actual, rooms that are designed specifically for live streaming and podcasting and being able to do additional things. Chris has had, been helping out this guy, Victor Antonio, and he's got this really cool whiteboard that he puts behind him that he can like, I think he writes on it and it like shows up on the live stream and everything else, but it's like $3,000. It's like, well, I don't know that I have $3,000 to do something like that, but that could be great
Yeah.
for doing instruction. And I think even um, I keep saying I want to do some like online courses, but sometimes you feel like there's so many of them out there. Is it worth the time? But but getting to do these live classes with people virtually, is just as good. And I would say, yeah, I want to write a book. That's on the list as well.
Cool.
So those, yeah, definitely planning to keep growing and not planning to leave at the Atlanta area anytime soon. I think there's uh, a lot of growth still in Atlanta. I mean, I think we've talked about even the fact that we probably at a minimum should do like some virtual type conference that involves Atlanta that maybe eventually becomes a hybrid type thing because the people come here, but they're not all locals. So that's
Yeah.
another goal as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll have to bring you on again in the future to do an update as your journey evolves, because I think it'd be interesting to see, how things pan out, because I think your world's moving pretty quickly.
Well, thanks. This is definitely like I said, I definitely appreciate this. This has been great getting to talk to you as well.
Yeah. So, knowing that, but before I open the floor for you to like, to say the best way to connect with you, and knowing that, a lot of the listeners here are people who are not sharing but want to share, or are sharing and want to just share in bigger ways to make a bigger impact. Do you have any last words for listeners here today?
Yeah, don't be afraid to give away what you think is your secret sauce. Because the truth of the matter is when you tell people how to do things and are truly genuinely sharing, what's going to happen is as an example, could I build my own website? Sure. But do I want to? No. So if I somebody tells me how to build a website and I need a website, I'm going to go to them. It's kind of the same thing. If you want to do a live stream and you don't know how, I've got a whole podcast with all this free information to help you, but don't be afraid to approach me. People want help with podcast, talking to you or Chris or others. But I think that's where people hold themselves back because it's like, well, I can't tell anybody what I do because if they know it, then, there's more people that need help than people that can help. And so I think that to me is the biggest mistake I see with those people that are afraid to share. And and don't be afraid to share because you're going to have, not everybody's going to like us. And that's okay. You're going to get those trolls. Just, and just don't let it get to you, keep that close-knit community of supporters around you and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's great advice. Because going off of that, I found that if you share your secret sauce, like it can make a big impact for other people. Because you may be an expert in something, and even if you give a small thing that you would consider small to someone else, that could be the world to them because it's something that maybe they can't see from their perspective. So even
Right.
just giving those small things that are that secret sauce can make a big impact.
Yeah, we sometimes assume that people know that what we already know, and you're absolutely right. I mean, case in point, just the other day, one of my classes, this company has over 20,000 people on their Facebook page getting very low engagement, and it's a dive shop. That's like, well, why don't you guys have a Facebook group? Oh, we had never thought of that because they could get all their, they'll get higher engagement. They can have a community of all the divers that come to this dive shop, up in North Carolina, but you would just assume like, "Oh, well, you didn't know you could have a group?" And, you know, but those are the sort of things you run into where people don't think about like, "Oh, I can put my business on Google and people will find me." So yeah, you just never know what may seem like something small to you can be, life-changing for someone else, and they won't forget you for it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. So, Jim, like, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to reach out to you? Like, if someone listened today and was like, "Man, I got a ton of value. I just want to say thank you to Jim." Like, how do they send you that thank you message, or how do you
Yeah,
prefer they connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably the place I like people to connect with me the most, and just look for my name, Jim Fuhs, and then also on Twitter, it's Fusion Marketing, and the marketing is it's FUHSIONMKTG. Those are the two platforms I'm the most active. I mean, you can go look for me on Facebook, but if you're going to do that, probably better going to my business page because we can only have 5,000 friends, and not that I don't have 5,000, but I'm just become much more select about who I'll make friends on Facebook. Where LinkedIn, I'm much more likely to connect.
Yeah, because LinkedIn you can have what 15,000 or do you
30,000.
know
I think
30?
it's 30. Yeah,
Oh wow,
yeah. It's gonna
awesome.
take a while.
Yeah, so connect with Jim on LinkedIn. Feel free to message him. He's very open to having conversations and helping out. So he's very knowledgeable in all these topics, as you can tell. Um, so Jim, thanks so much for coming on today. I mean, before I let you go, I do like to ask for feedback. Earlier today you spoke at my weekly influencer meetup, and then now you're on my podcast, and you've been coming to the meetup for a while now. Several months. So I'm just curious, like, do you have any feedback for me on, like, either positive or constructive? Just
No, I
anything.
think you do a great job with the meetup. I mean, I think just if anything, right? It's just you've actually got a nice format now, right? We all get to kind of meet each other beforehand, and I think you do a great job of bringing in guests, and you're consistent with it. And I think you're also bringing in quality people. That's why I come back, right? It's not always about the speaker. It's just about the fact of get to know, like, and trust these people that you get to show up every week. So no, I think it's been great. Like I think a thing I've only complaint I have, like I've told you before, is the 1 o'clock time is a little bit of a conflict for me, but I'm able to work through it. But I liked it when it was in the evening because I could have a beer with it.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you there. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you speaking at the meetup and for being a guest here today. I really thank you for that, and you shared a ton of awesome stuff, and I learned a lot from you today.
Thanks, Jeremy. And I appreciate everything you did for me today. I really enjoyed it, and humbled to be asked to be on your podcast as well.
Yeah, thanks. So, just as a reminder, that this episode is sponsored by TubeBuddy. So, if you're creating YouTube content, then consider downloading the TubeBuddy plugin for your browser. It helps you do SEO research and optimize your YouTube presence. I've got a free 30-day trial link in the description below. Also, connect with Jim. His link is also in the description and in the show notes on our website. So just go connect with him on LinkedIn, follow him on Twitter, and check out some of his content because he's doing some amazing work. And if you're trying to grow your influence, then I definitely invite you to come to our meetups that we host every week. It's an open community, so just if you want to join, you can go to my website, whyinfluence.com, whyinfluence.com, and you'll see the community tab, and you can join the community there. And we'd love to have you at the next meetup. And thanks again, Jim, for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks everyone for watching.